Hi guys, so I did say at the end of my Scream film rankings that I wanted to do a little bit more on Scream before I put the whole thing into hibernation until Scream 7. So I decided to do a character ranking. I thought that would be quite fun. There are so many great heroes and villains in this series now across the entire 6-film run. So throughout most of this morning I have been making a massive list of my favourite Scream characters, and I'm about to now go through them one by one from worst to best. So no more introduction needed, let's dive into it, and we will start with the one in 25th place. This is a mostly unremarkable character until very late on in Scream 5, where she has two really great moments. Firstly, she pretends to be Ghostface just to wind Mindy up, which is a moment I really like, and also her death when Amber just randomly shoots her. Definitely one of the best Ghostface reveals to me, although let's not get sidetracked into talking about Amber, but Liv's a pretty decent character, albeit she only just sneaks into this list, and I have to admit I couldn't remember her name. I had to look it up on Google. This is another one I had to look up. I remembered this character as being Parker Posey. I didn't actually remember her actual character name, but she's fun, you know. She's Gail's doppelganger in this film on the film set. I don't think I liked this character the first time I watched the movie. She's somebody who becomes a little bit more fun the more you watch this. Incidentally, there's another character from the Scream 3 film set, the woman who plays Sidney's duplicate / doppelganger. She almost made it into this ranking. She came 26th before I decided how many characters I was going to include. Come to think of it, I don't think any of the other Scream 3 film set characters have made it into this ranking. I think Jennifer's the only one. Fair would be to rip your insides out. I love the Principal Himbry character. I guess for a lot of older people, Henry Winkler will always be most famous for being the Fonz, but for me, he will always be Principal Himbry. It's such a shame actually that they killed this guy off. I think it would have been really cool if he'd have lived through Scream 1 and come back for a lot of the sequels, and in every film we'd have gotten to see him admonish at least one student in each one. That could have been fun. It's quite clever though in Scream 1 how for the briefest moment you do actually think that he is the killer, but hey ho, he was only in the one movie, but he was so damn cool in that one movie. So we've arrived at our first Scream killer. That's not to say that all the Scream killers appear in this ranking. In fact, I can tell you for certain right now that they don't. But Roman's worthy of inclusion. He hides his villainy very well in this film. I think he deserves a lot of credit for being, still to this day, the only solo Ghostface. I think his finale, where he's battling Sid, really packs a punch, and he's got a fascinating backstory, given the fact that he was apparently hanging around in Woodsboro during the events of Scream 1. Yeah, I know all that stuff was added in later on, but get into the spirit of it, you know what I mean? I do wish more people would respect Scream 3. It's a very fun film, and also a very serious film when it has to be. This is another one I didn't know the name of until today. I'd previously just thought of him as Nico from Grand Theft Auto 4, because he's got that same kind of Serbian hitman type look. But he's a good character, this guy. I think he's a good fit for Sam as a boyfriend figure, and definitely for me one of the best additions in the recent film. I was really relieved actually that he didn't turn out to be one of the killers. I think that would have been extremely lame, so I was thankful for that. And I hope he comes back in number 7 and he's not just quietly discarded, because I think there's potential for this character. This character is bitchy, obnoxious, irritating, one-dimensional, but she's hot. So I'm going to put her into the list at number 20. No, she's fun as well. I remember this character more than some of the more famous characters in the franchise, funnily enough. This is an entertaining person to watch go about her business in this film, albeit her personality is very questionable. Although she does get a good death. Doesn't she get stabbed in a car park and then thrown off the car park? A fitting end for the character, I think. You know, I mean, her career has just plummeted, given that Sidney's sacked her, so her body might as well plummet as well, her very hot body. I used to despise this character. Obviously, he's really hot, anybody can tell that. But he also does this really irritating gentleman Jim act around Sidney, where he's just constantly being all Mr. Sensitive, the perfect, attentive boyfriend. He's just too perfect, this guy. I get why he annoys the bejesus out of Randy. He would annoy me if I was in Randy's shoes. I mean, what are you supposed to do against this guy? He's got no weaknesses. He's perfect. But over time, somehow I've come to like him more. Like, the more I watch the movie, the more I actually come to appreciate Derek somehow. And that scene where he gets up and starts singing that song in the cafeteria, when I first watched Scream 2 in the cinema, God, did I hate that scene. Like, I had to cover myself. I just found it completely cringe. At the time, it was as if Derek was actually inside the cinema doing the singing, but every other time I've watched Scream 2, that scene has gradually got better for me, and I kind of like it now. I find it entertaining. I like the fact that Mickey's there clapping along, and I don't know, I've come to appreciate Derek, and I don't know why. I think maybe it's because he gets shot by the end of this film. I couldn't cope with this character if he'd have stuck around for 3, 4, 5, 6, but the fact he's just in this one, it means I can just sort of like him. When I first watched Scream 1 as a teenager, I found Tatum to be the cutest of all the female characters, and I was a little bit sad when she died, although I did predict it. I mean, I was fairly knowledgeable about slasher films at the time that I watched this, and as a general rule, the best friend of the main female lead is always likely to get killed off at some point, and that's what happens in this film. There's a YouTube channel called Cavern of Terror. Very good channel. It's got lots of good stuff on it. But the guy who runs it, he's an absolute Scream nut. And he did this video years ago where he came up with this theory that Tatum was actually the third killer in Scream, or fourth if you count Roman. But this guy spent about 10 minutes in this video forensically going through the film and giving some very good reasoning as to why Tatum was in on it with Stu and Billy. It's really good. Give it a watch. Cavern of Terror is the channel, and you go into the guy's playlist. He's got like a playlist just for Scream videos. You'll find the video in there. It's absolutely worth a watch. I'm not a big fan of the ghost face motives in Scream 2. I think all that stuff at the end in the theatre falls a little bit flat. But Mickey as a character is pretty damn good. He's quite amusing. He's certainly way better than his partner in crime, Mrs Loomis, who does not make this ranking. Mickey is just a random psychopath, really. Sort of like the Joker of the Scream verse. You know, he's just some guy out to cause chaos, do a few kills, have a good time doing it, you know, grin throughout a lot of his scenes, and treats the film like a bit of a joke, this guy. But I like him. He's pretty cool. I think he should really have just carried this movie by himself, and that would have been fine. I don't think he needed Mrs Loomis. I don't think Chad makes that much impression in Scream 5, but in 6, I think he comes to the fore a lot more, albeit he gets some really badly written moments in number 6. For instance, this whole thing where he comes back at the end, even though he's been stabbed like 5 million times, that's really off for me. Nobody's coming back from that. It's one of the really weak points of Scream 6. And also the romance with Tara, not massively convinced that those two match very well in terms of this group of people, this group of characters. So when it comes to Chad, I kind of feel like he's a good character in theory. He's just not necessarily written that well all of the time. Hopefully with Scream 7 he'll be written brilliantly and he'll knock it out the park, and that will be his movie to really be the character that I think he's got the potential to be. But for now, I like him. I just don't like the writers who write for him somehow. I don't think I pegged Amber as a potential Ghostface during Scream 5, but then I don't have a very good record of guessing who the Ghostface is in each film, but Amber gets so many great scenes towards the end of her movie. There's that one where she's with Mindy in the cellar and they're just kind of winding each other up, pretending to be Ghostface. It's just such a well-written scene. And then there's the moment where Amber shoots Liv. It's, like I said earlier, it's one of the best Ghostface reveals in the whole series. Then there's that scene where, for some reason, Amber goes outside. I can't remember why, but Gail and Sidney just aren't buying what she's selling. And it's just brilliant what happens in that scene. And then later on, the fight in the kitchen when Amber is sort of pretending to be all innocent and helpless, and then she goes back to being a psycho, and then she starts pretending to be helpless and innocent again. It's just so darkly hilarious. I absolutely love it. And all these scenes I've been describing, they all happen within like 10, 15 minutes. Amber in the finale of this film is just absolute gold. But there's no place in this ranking for her partner in crime, who, for me, doesn't really have one memorable scene in the movie. I kind of feel like this character was a little bit wasted in the end, and that's saying something about how I feel about this guy, given the fact that he was in 3 of the movies and I'm still not satisfied. In Scream 2, I never bought into the idea that he was the killer. I think the movie spends way too much time going, look, it's Cotton, look how suspicious he's acting, look at him. No, I wasn't buying that. But at the beginning of Scream 3, they kill him off, and when I first saw the movie, I kind of liked that death. I think it was just the adrenaline of watching it for the first time in the cinema. I was like, oh, wow, they've killed off Cotton. This is rocking. I'm really into this. But the more I've reflected on that death over the years, I kind of feel like it was a mistake. I think maybe they should have waited until Scream 4 and then killed Cotton in the beginning, and that could have been like the big comeback moment for the franchise in 2011. I would have liked at least one movie with Cotton where we know he's the good guy 100%, and you know, he would have been going around that film set in Scream 3 helping Gail and Sidney solve the mystery. I think that would have been really cool, but as it is, we didn't get that, although I'll still say to this day the 100% Cotton billboard is one of my favourite billboards in movie history, except maybe for the Jason one in Jason Takes Manhattan. I feel like this character should be higher than this, given the fact that she's pretty much been one of the main leads for 2 movies now. I think in theory, a character like this should really be looking to be in the top 10 of this kind of ranking. But I don't feel like this character, or the actress playing her, comes out of these 2 films, Scream 5 and 6, as big a star as Melissa Barrera. For me, out of the 2 sisters, Sam is the standout character. Tara's fine. I do like the way that she keeps battling through her injuries throughout Scream 5. She shows a lot of fight. I like that. It's good how she's back on her feet in Scream 6. It's good for the actress, good for the character. But I kind of feel like I want to see how her arc ends in Scream 7 before I make my final judgments on her. This set of films is starting to feel like a trilogy. I do feel like a lot of the characters will come to an end one way or the other with Scream 7, whether they die or whether they get a happy ending. It just has that feel about it at the moment. Scream 6 did feel like a kind of middle chapter film in a lot of ways. Tara's all right. I think she's written better than Chad, but I think if I was to do this same ranking again after the next film or after the next couple of films, I feel like the character could fluctuate. You know, I feel like I could really bump Tara up a lot, or she could plummet if I'm just not thrilled with how she's or how she turns out in Scream 7. Similar to Chad, I kind of feel like Mindy should have been killed off in Scream 6, really. When she gets stabbed on the train, I think that should have been it for her. I don't really see where this character could go in Scream 7. I feel like she was good for 2 films, but I feel like that's kind of it for her, or it should have been it for her. She has some really good scenes in Scream 5. You know, the one where she's talking to Amber in the basement, and also the one where she's talking to Liv on the settee. Brilliantly written scenes. I just feel like she gets less of those in Scream 6 somehow, and that moment on the train should have really been it for her, but I'll hold judgment until I've seen the next one, I suppose. I don't know why I'm carrying this sword around suddenly. It was on the couch. It's my son's, my 8-year-old son's, and I just felt like picking it up and swishing it around for a minute, I guess. I haven't been to school since 1999, and yet I find it hard to imagine that by 2011 it was the in thing to start going around with video diary equipment on your head. But then again, there's always one person at every school who's just doing things that other people aren't. But I like this character. He's kind of fun, and I could easily picture Professor Himbry laying into this character if he was still alive by this movie. You know, he could have done a good rant with Robbie and Charlie. He could have said something like, "So you thought it was a good idea to do a video diary on a day like today? I'm going to see that you never go to any film school ever." But sadly, you know, Himbry killed off in Scream 1. Robbie and Charlie do the whole Stabathon thing, don't they, with the barn. I absolutely love that concept for Scream 4. And I love Robbie's death. So he gets a death in this where he tries to get out of it by coming out as gay. Just really funny. And I have to think that he's being truthful with that. I don't think Robbie is quick-witted enough to just come out with that as a tactic for staying alive. But sadly, mate, Jill doesn't care whether you're gay or straight. She just wants to be famous. So you've got to go. So into the top 10 we go, and we're into the really, really top tier characters now as far as I'm concerned. Billy is an absolute legend within this franchise. Some people don't like his recent appearances as a ghost type figure, speaking to Sam, but I kind of like those scenes. I just find them a little bit creepy, and I think they're good for the Sam character as well. But in terms of the original Billy performance in Scream 1, you know, it was fantastic. I'd never seen anything like this before in a slasher film. I spent most of Scream 1 thinking that the killer was going to turn out to be somebody really random, or possibly Sidney's dad at a stretch, a character we'd not really spent much time with, but I certainly didn't think it would turn out to be one of the kids who'd been in plain sight the whole time. That was a new experience for me. I'd never seen any giallo or anything like that up to that point. So yeah, Billy's amazing. He's got that really unique look with the hair and the white t-shirt, and yeah, what more is there to say? The guy is a friggin' legend. The fact that this guy turned out to be a killer in Scream 1 blew me away even more, because this guy was my favourite character throughout most of the story. I distinctly remember that when I watched this for the first time, I really liked Stu from the very beginning, and I remember really hoping that he would survive as long as possible, even though deep down I kind of figured that he was the sort of jokey character who would probably get killed off around about the point of the movie that, say, Tatum dies, you know. So when he suddenly turns up with that mouthpiece thing to reveal himself as Billy's accomplice, it totally blew me away. And I was like, whoa, Jesus. He has such a footprint in the whole world of Scream discussions online and stuff. You know, he's only been in one of the 6 movies, and yet he's talked about so much, especially when it comes to the possibility of him coming back. I never used to be a fan of the idea of him coming back, around about the point of Scream 2, 3, 4, when it was still a very believably short series. But now they've got to this point with 6 movies, and they've had so many different sets of killers by this point. I kind of feel like, what the hell, just bring him back. You wouldn't even need to bring him back as a killer. You could just have him in there as a kind of sad middle-aged dude who's been released from prison, but just his very presence could attract new killers, and his presence would certainly put the cat amongst the pigeons in terms of Sidney potentially coming back to Woodsboro, and Sam, you know, because she'd want to get to know Stu to find out about what her dad was like. And there's lots of potential, I think, for the characters to all kind of encircle around Stu if he was made the nucleus of a future Scream movie. I hope they realise the potential for that, but as it is, just based on this one incredible performance that Matthew Lillard gives in Scream 1, I'm absolutely going to have this guy in the top 10. It's curious to me how Gail is now the longest surviving character in the entire series who's still in the movies. I get that Sidney's still alive, but Gail's still appearing in the movies. She's the only person who's been in all 6, I think. But it's weird because she doesn't have any abilities that would help her survive a slasher world. She can't fight, she's not good at running or being in chases or anything like that. She's just lucky somehow. She's always kind of just slightly away from the centre of the stage so that she would have a little bit of a chance of survival, and she does. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, I do like the character to a point. I do like that bitchy reporter side to her that just never seems to fully go away. If she'd just become fully good after, say, Scream 3, I think she would have been even more tedious, the fact that she keeps appearing in these movies. But the fact that she's always got a bit of Gailness in her, it does keep her sort of fun to watch. And the moment in Scream 6 where she dodges the punch, that was definitely one of the funnier moments of Scream 6. But I think she should have gone in number 6. I mean, where else are you going to take the character at this point? I just feel like they're keeping her around as a kind of lucky charm now, just because she's the only character who's been in all of them. It's not like Courtney Cox is the sort of actress now that you don't dare leave out of your franchise. You know, she's well past her commercial prime. The 90s was Courtney Cox's time, arguably the noughties as well, possibly. But, I mean, come on. The amount of money that it probably costs to keep putting Cox in these movies, and I'm not sure that she's adding that much as Gail right now. She's a good character. She's had a brilliant innings. I do like, and there's no way that I couldn't keep her out of the top 10. But yeah, come on. Gail Weathers, the only surviving character out of all these characters, really? I didn't realise how much I actually liked Judy Hicks as a character until they actually kill her off halfway through Scream 5. And then suddenly it was a case of, oh, I actually feel surprisingly sad about this. Bring her back. Resurrect her. I don't like this anymore. I'd not really thought about her that much until the moment that she dies. She just kind of pops into a few scenes here and there. She is in a lot of Scream 4, to be fair, and a few bits at the start of Scream 5. She's a fun, bubbly sort of character. But yeah, when she was dead, it was kind of like, I just felt kind of sorrowful about it. It's a bit like, I guess in real life, if you're like at college or something and there's like a girl that you really like, but then she leaves and then suddenly you think to yourself, oh, that girl who's just left, who I've known for like 18 months or whatever, I actually really liked her and I didn't realise it until today when she's left. So Judy Hicks is kind of like the movie version of that scenario, if you see what I mean. And now when I watch Scream 4 and 5, I take note of the character a lot more and I'm enjoying what she's doing in this world. I think I totally get why in number 4 she's considered to be one of the killers, because she's just got one of those kind of fun, offbeat personalities where you could mistake some of her mannerisms, if you see what I mean. I think it's a shame that she's not still in the franchise, although I don't know how she would have been in Scream 6 necessarily. I guess it could have been a case of, oh, let me introduce you to Judy Hicks. She's our FBI agent in New York. And yeah, she obviously wasn't going to hang around in Woodsboro after the death of her son. She needed a change of scenery, and she just happens to be here where the next Scream movie is taking place. And she just happens to be taking charge of this case. Yeah, that might have been a bit hard for people to swallow, I suppose. Although they could have kept her in reserve for Scream 7, you know, a bit like Sidney, who's not in Scream 6. But Judy's a good character, you know. I like her, and very deserving of a place in my top 10. Kirby's a real fan favourite, and I'm definitely in that group as well, because I just think this character is absolutely amazing. I don't think I'd ever seen a character like this before, a female horror film geek. The moment that you realise that Kirby's got all this knowledge going on, it's really cool for the movie, actually. And I think what makes this character work is the fact that they haven't cast somebody who is like an impossibly gorgeous, big-breasted bimbo. I mean, the actress who they've got to play the part is still really good looking, but in a very real-world kind of way, and it just makes the character very believable somehow. She feels like a real character. And that moment where she starts reeling off all the remakes, that is amazing. I mean, I'm not even sure I could do that in a pub quiz, never mind in a life or death situation, but she just keeps reeling them off. And And then you get this pause at the other end of the phone as Ghostface is just completely flummoxed. It's just brilliant writing, and I'm really happy as well that Kirby got to come back in Scream 6. So we're still on Scream 4, and this girl, for me, is the best Scream killer in all of the movies. You can take your Billies and your Stews and your Mickeys and shove them where the sun don't shine, as far as I'm concerned, because this girl has got it going on. I mean, Jill is malicious. She's dragging this poor kid along in this film, Charlie, presumably sleeping with him off camera as well, just to keep him on side. Her real boyfriend, her official one, she shoots in the balls. Nasty. And then she's throwing herself around this living room, like throwing herself into coffee tables and stuff, just to make it look like she's the innocent victim in the entire thing. Jill wins this film. She's like the only Ghostface to actually win. All the other Ghostfaces, they reveal themselves and then they die 5 minutes later. But Jill doesn't. She actually wins the scenario. And it's only because we then have this weird epilogue that movie logic kind of just comes along and flips it around so that actually Jill dies and Sidney and Gail and Dewey survive. But it feels a little bit unfair that it does feel like the victory is taken away from Jill somehow. I've heard some people say that Jill should have been the winner of this film and then come back for the next one, but I'm not sure what that film would have looked like, so I'm not necessarily going to side with that opinion, and plus Scream 5 is amazing, so I'm not sure I would go back in my DeLorean personally and keep Jill alive at the end of this, but it is a little bit unfair the way that she's bumped off. You know, I feel like there should be a TV spot in this universe later down the line where somebody's like, here's Jill, the winner of, the only winner of Scream, here she is now, basking in the barley sun, her debt to society paid in full. But no, she's killed in an epilogue, as harsh as it is. But as a character and as a villain, she is absolutely superb. For me, the best Ghostface in the franchise. A wonderful character who is sorely missed today. When I first watched Scream 1, I'm not sure I noticed Randy that much because I think I was so busy being entertained by Stu and I was so busy just looking at Tatum that Randy kind of falls by the wayside for me on first viewing. But when you rewatch Scream 1 and rewatch the entire first trilogy, actually, Randy just stands out more and more each time. His dialogue is so sharp. That scene in Scream 1 where he's on the settee and Ghostface is coming up behind him as Randy is watching Halloween, I just found that to be so clever the first time I watched it, because I was a big fan of Halloween coming into my first viewing of Scream, which is the ideal position to be in. His death in number 2 is just easily the most shocking moment of number 2. You totally don't see it coming, and it's really cool that they bring him back in number 3 in the videotape. I suspect that if they'd have known Scream would still be a thing in 2023 and we would potentially be about to go into a 7th movie, I don't think they would have killed him off as early as they did. I reckon at the time they probably saw Scream as something that would have a shelf life of maybe 3-4 films tops, and they could get away with killing Randy in number 2. I bet they would do it differently now, but what a great character. Honestly, he's just somebody that we can all relate to, I guess, as horror fans, and he's brilliantly played by Jamie Kennedy. Every scene that Randy turns up in, he really adds to it. Everybody's favourite lovable crap cop, although back when this series was still just a trilogy, I don't think I liked Dewey that much. I can still fondly hear that guy in Scream 3 calling him Dewdrop. That was funny, but I used to think of Dewey as the guy who's always arguing with Gail in Scream 2 and 3, and it's a little bit irritating. Certainly that element of the first 3 films is not my favourite, but in Scream 4, I think Dewey's relationship with Gail is more fun to follow, and certainly Dewey's part in 5 is really good. It's really poignant what they give him in number 5, and sitting in now, I'd say, yeah, it's just a brilliant character. That journey that he's gone on since he was just the young cop in the first film, lusting after Gail. It's been quite the journey for Dewey. Brilliant character. Very lucky part for that actor to get. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Absolutely disgraceful. I don't know his name. But yeah, Dewey's awesome, and number 3 in my list. I would have said that Sidney was my number 1 until I sat down and started planning this video. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, I think she's actually number 2 now. I mean, don't get me wrong, brilliant character, one of the best final girls of all time, especially in that original trilogy. I mean, it's so much fun following her adventures against the various ghost faces, and it's really clever how it cycles all the way around to Roman's character by the end of number 3. She's still pretty good in number 4, I suppose, but the diminishing returns have set in for the character, I think, by that point. Number 5 is just a glorified guest cameo, really. I'm not sure what future there is now for Sidney in Scream, because it's a bit different with Jamie Lee in Halloween. You know, Laurie and Michael have this kind of eternal struggle going on, but with Sidney, all her enemies are dead, really. The only way you could bring her back in any meaningful way is to have Stu return, and then there's a deep connection to the earlier material. But just bringing her back because there's a new ghost face in town and Sidney wants to help, I'm not sure that's going to have that much impact for me personally. But the character itself, herself, I should say, she's not a thing. Superb character, role of a lifetime for Neve Campbell, obviously, but she's not my number 1. Let's now find out who that is. I'm sure there are some people watching this right now who are mortally offended by the fact that I have put Sam ahead of Sidney. Well, firstly, tough shit. You've already watched most of the video by this point. Secondly, this is only something that I've come to realise just now, really, as I've been putting this video together. Sidney can't exactly fall back on the numbers, really. It's not like Sidney's been in this long-running franchise and Sam's just come along for like 1 film. If we only take into account films where Sidney's been the main conventional final girl, then she's only really done the original trilogy. The 4th film, she's still a main character, but she's already making that transition to side character at that point. And the 5th film, it's glorified cameo still foremost. So 3 films maybe for Sidney as a final girl, or 4 if you really want to debate it. But Sam's done 2, and certainly she's going to do 3, because I can't see how she's not going to be like the main character in Scream 7 as well. So for me, it comes down to character, and I just find Sam more fascinating. I really like the way this girl, Melissa Barrera, plays this character, albeit arguably she's slightly too old for the part, if you look up how old she is on Wiki. But she's got a fascinating backstory. She's not had it easy. It's really cool how she's constantly trying to look out for her sister, even though her sister doesn't want it. Sam just does it anyway. I think Sam, she does really well in the action sequences in this franchise, and her murderous tendencies that she's got just under the surface that often lead to like these frantic stabbing sessions. I kind of think that's really cool for a character like this, you know, a final girl in a slasher film. And I like her connection to Billy from the first movie. It's interesting, you know, the fact that he's constantly there in her mind. I think overall she's just got enough facets about her character that just make me enjoy her slightly more than Sidney, which just does feel blasphemous. You know, Sidney's probably been in the better movies, just about. I mean, come on, nothing's going to touch the original, but in a ranking like this, I'm putting Sam ahead of Sidney. Sorry. Although, if in Scream 7 they somehow make Sam one of the killers, Sidney might be back in the game at that point. I might have to review the whole thing, so we'll see. But for today, Sam is my number 1. Thank you for joining me in this video. I'll be back to do something else very, very soon. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.